Couple of notes on estimating standard deviation and variance. When you're doing your estimations, keep your numbers in decimal form when you're doing your calculations, because variance is percent squared, which is kind of a weird sense of units. And so if you keep it as kind of 1.3 for 1.3% instead of 0.013, so if you had 1.3%, you would want to put it in your calculations as 0.013 and keep that through. Otherwise, you can run into problems. At the end, when you come up with your mean, when you come up with your average, and when you come up with your standard deviation, then you can convert them back into percentages. But in the meantime, work with decimals. A couple of calculator notes. A lot of times we deal with numbers that are really, really small. And so the calculator will give you this, it'll give you a number, and then it'll say E, and it'll have to like -5, let's say. And what that means is that's the number here that if you had 2.35, so you had 2.35, and then you move the decimal point to the left 5 places. So you go from 2.35 and you move over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 0.0000235. So that's how you make the conversion. Now, here's what's neat is suppose you did the conversion and you want to make sure your number's right. What you can do is type into your calculator the number that you think it is, hit enter, and then 2.35 e to the -5th should appear. And so what happens is if you get a number, let's say, 1.892 e to the -6, you want to work with that. But it's hard to work with that, so you come up with what you think it is. You can then type that in the calculator and hit enter, and if 1.892 e -6 comes up, the number you think it is the right one. But if you type it in and hit enter and you get 1.892 e to the -7th, then you need to go ahead and take away one of the zeros. And so this way you can confirm, you get a number, you find out what you think it is, and then you can check to make sure that what you think, or you can find out to double check that what you think it is in fact what it is. A couple of notes about order of operations. Let's suppose you have a deviation of -5, and then you square it. -5 squared, you will get -25, because it'll do 5 squared, which is 25, and then take the opposite. So you need to have your parentheses. This is -5, that number, squared, and you'll get 25. So remember, squared deviations are all positive. If you get a negative, something's going on. One of the culprits could be order of operations. A little shortcut, remember the square root of a number is that number to the power of 0.5. So you do all this work and you come up with the variance. An easy way to then convert the variance into the standard deviation is to take it to the half power. So take it to the 0.5 power. If you do your work on variance and then you say I want to use the square root function, then you either have to write it down or store it. You activate the square root function and then you type in the variance, hit enter, and it'll give you the square root. But if you have the variance because you've already worked through it, and then you just take it to the power of 0.5, you'll get the square root that you want. Rounding suggestions. If you're dealing with a value, remember if it's less than 10,000, if you go to the nearest penny, you'll always be good as far as being within the band. If it's greater than 10,000, you can round to the nearest dollar. If you have a rate, you want to round it to the nearest hundredth of a percent. So if it's in percentage term, that's 2 decimal points. If it's in decimal form, that's 4 decimal places. Here's new. If you're doing the variance calculations, you want to round all numbers to 5 decimal places, except for one, which is the weight for the variance multiplied by the squared deviation. Because that number can be quite small, you want to make sure to go to 6 places. If you only go 4 or 5, you could wind up cutting off important digits, and because of rounding, coming up substantially different than what the true answer is. If you're doing Connect homework, don't round.